Hey everyone, it's Connor here from Durham Hearing Specialists. I hope you're doing well and welcome back to this update. What you're seeing in this test tube here, I'll just pause it, is that little black splodge is a piece of infected earwax that I harvested from a patient's ear ages ago. And there were little, I suspected at the time it was fungal, but I wasn't entirely sure what species, so I stuck it in the test tube and lo and behold, it's grown a colony of fungus. And then below that, that sort of beige thing, is a slice of apple that I decided to feed the fungus. Now, so in the initial stages of growth, I uploaded a video on it and it was Aspergillus niger, and you could see all the spores kind of sprouting out of this piece of infected earwax. And since then, people have been asking me for an update, and here is the update. So I did feed it a piece of apple, and here it is. The Aspergillus niger fungus has, grown from that piece of infected earwax and nicely spread across the apple. So I thought I would give you an update just to tell you what happened, basically. But it's a very, very nice shot here because, as you can see, well, to the naked eye, or even through like an endoscope or whatever, the spores of Aspergillus niger, or any Aspergillus fungus really, they look like kind of spherical dots or like round heads. But as you can see, mature spores under high magnification, they're not perfectly round. They actually look kind of like little explosions. So they're like I'm guessing that just, when they're mature enough, they're kind of under the weight of all the spores, just kind of like fall outwards. And that's what we're seeing. But probably what you can't see, and I wish there was kind of some way of doing it, maybe like I'd have to kind of soak the apple in lots of potassium hydroxide, but weaved right into the apple, there will be a very, very dense proliferative network of little hairs, and that's what we call the mycelium. So, which is the kind of like rooting, kind of reproductive, feeding part of the fungus. So the general rule is that in the kingdom of fungi, which is different from the kingdom of animals and plants and so on, it's its own separate thing. So fungi are not plants. But whenever you see spores or a mushroom, that is merely just part of the very dense network of fungal cells underneath. So that's really just the reproductive part. And there'll be a whole web underneath that, which is feeding on whatever organic matter that the spores or the mushroom is growing out of. And just here, actually, you can see that kind of random offshoot. This is a very clear sign that the fungus, you'll see it later on in the video, but it's not just growing on the apple or the earwax anymore. It's kind of like totally spread out across this test tube, and it's growing up on the side of the plastic and everything, and even the little kind of smearings against the plastic where I shoved in the apple, it's growing on that and it's creating spores, and it's just everywhere. And it just goes to show that fungus, like Aspergillus niger or any species of Aspergillus, is incredibly, incredibly efficient at spreading and proliferating. And I mean, that little black splodge of the infected earwax, I left that in the test tube for ages, and I mean months. It's only kind of when I remembered, I should probably do something with this, that I looked at it and I thought, I'll feed it some apple. So, and of course, it's colonized on that. So it needs resources, I suppose, but it doesn't need much water. And I mean, most species of Aspergillus require hardly any water at all. They can survive in really harsh climates. So you could call that like xerophilic, or they're xerophiles or xerophilic, which means they don't need a lot of water. So, and xerox is Greek for dry, and philic or phile means loving. So like if you're an audiophile, you love like high quality audio, you're into that, or hydrophilic means you love water. So in this case, they're xerophilic. And in case you're wondering, I mean, yes, this is the type of fungus that can make you sick, make you ill, so you should definitely not do this. Definitely, this is, by the way, just to give you some context, we've now zoomed up a little bit, and this is the piece of infected earwax, which is really not really earwax anymore. It's not even the color of earwax. It's just a dense mesh of like fungal cells, which is kind of like the kind of hair mat kind of thing that you're seeing. So remember that the splodge of earwax I kind of shoved up against the plastic. So you're kind of seeing it like from down below, so you're seeing the kind of underside of the colony, so to speak. And here, this is what I was talking about. When I shoved in that piece of apple, I inadvertently smeared a little bit of like apple juice and debris, I guess, against the plastic. And at high magnification, you can see here, again, the mycelium of the fungus kind of growing on that and feeding on those resources. So the little strands we call hyphae or hyphae. So like if you say like the little stalks that the spores rest on, that's kind of like that's a hyphae, and the mycelium are made up of hyphae. So, and what the hyphae do is they're all interconnected together, and they will secrete digestive enzymes, which will then be sucked back into the network and feed the fungus. So yeah, this is the type of fungus like that can cause disease, and I suppose the most common ones would be otomycosis, oto meaning ear and myco meaning a relationship with fungus, so that's a fungal ear infection. Or you would breathe these spores in, which is not necessarily a huge deal if you have a normal immune system. That's fine. I mean, Aspergillus niger and Fumigatus and Flavus, whatever species, there are about 250 Aspergillus species in the world. It's not a problem. But if you inhale a lot and you have a compromised immune system, or you have a lung condition like asthma or cystic fibrosis, then it can make you really ill, in which case you would have pulmonary aspergillosis, pulmonary meaning relationship with the lungs. So it can make you really ill. Definitely do not replicate this experiment at home. It can be quite dangerous to grow these kind of little colonies and stuff. And if you're wondering about the name, I'm fairly sure I mentioned this in the previous video, but Aspergillus niger, again, niger being Latin for black, and Aspergillus is Italian actually. So not Latin or Greek, which usually these names come from, but it derives from the term aspergillum, which is, if you're a Catholic, you've probably seen one, but a Catholic priest will get this kind of stick with a ball on the end, and the ball has holes in it, and then they'll put that in holy water and then sprinkle the congregation with holy water, and that's called an aspergillum. And the guy who first discovered Aspergillus mould underneath a microscope was an Italian priest called Pier Micheli, I think his name was, Pier Antonio Micheli. And as well as being a priest, he was also a biologist. So he thought under the microscope the spores looked like an aspergillum, hence the name Aspergillus. So, but as well as lungs and ears, I mean, it can also, I'm not entirely sure about Aspergillus niger, but there are other strains. Probably Fumigatus is the one that would infect your sinuses. So you've got your paranasal sinuses. So what you have in your sort of face, and I'm not an expert in sinuses, but basically you have sort of these hollows inside of your skull. So you have your frontal sinuses, so there are like two kind of hollows here above your eyebrows. Then you have maxillary sinuses behind your cheeks. And then you have a couple sort of in between your eyes, but a bit further back. So you have your ethmoid sinuses, which kind of look like little kind of pouches. And then behind that you have your sphenoid or sphenoid sinus. And these types of fungi can get in there and then grow and proliferate, and then an ENT surgeon will need to, potentially do a procedure to remove all of that. So it's quite interesting surgery actually. They usually do it endoscopically, and there are a load of videos on YouTube where you can see ENT surgeons going in and taking out all this fungus from someone's maxillary sinus. It's very, very interesting. So there we go. I hope you found this update interesting. It's still in the clinic, it's still there, just kind of happily growing away. I will probably have to throw it away at some point, but I thought that was just a very interesting update to a video I uploaded ages ago, and again, a lot of you guys have been asking me about it, so here it is. Here is the clinic colony of Aspergillus niger. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments section below. I will try my very best to get back to you. And of course, I will see you guys on the next video.